Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a fascinating paradox, a religious body known as the Christ Catholic Church. What makes this group so incredibly captivating is that they claim an ancient, unbroken apostolic succession, right? But at the same time, they operate with this radical, postmodern inclusivity. It's a combination you almost never see tied to such deep historical roots. So we're going to trace exactly where this church came from, how it evolved its totally unique structure, and how it manages to balance centuries-old tradition with a highly contemporary worldview. Let's just jump right into their foundational motto. It says, lead with love, celebrate the spirit, engage the mind, cherish the soul. This actually sits right at the very front of their constitutional documents. And honestly, it's a pretty huge contrast to the heavy, bureaucratic legalese you might expect from a church with ancient roots. It tells us right away that even though we're about to dive into some historical dates and canonical laws, the real driving force here has always been this dedicated attempt to merge intellectual engagement with deep spiritual and emotional care. Their official seal and cross emblem is a perfect example of this. Even if you don't know their full backstory yet, the design just screams antiquity. The structure, the Greek lettering, it immediately anchors the church in the ancient Eastern and Western traditions of early Christianity. According to their constitution, this seal, along with the church's name, are held in strict trust by the Holy Synod. So what does that tell us? Well, it proves that while they might be incredibly progressive socially today, they are fiercely protective of their historic Orthodox identity. To really wrap our heads around this paradox, we need to trace their literal historical lineage. This torch of succession was actually passed through 4 key bishops over a span of about 70 years. The Church's constitution explicitly traces its authentic succession through these distinct eras. You see, this isn't a church that just popped up overnight out of nowhere. It was carefully handed down, renamed, and reshaped by these 4 leaders, each one adapting the church to the needs of their specific time, all while keeping that apostolic core completely intact. The story really kicks off in 1937, when Bishop Joseph Zielonka grounds the movement firmly in the Polish Old Catholic tradition. Now, that term Old Catholic is absolutely vital here. It refers to a tradition of Catholicism that kept the ancient sacraments and apostolic succession, but operated totally independently from the Pope's jurisdiction in Rome. By starting the timeline with Bishop Zielonka, the Christ Catholic Church establishes its primary DNA. Basically, it is fundamentally a Catholic institution, but one born out of an independent, self-governing tradition that put the local community way ahead of any centralized imperial authority. Fast forward to 1961, and the church makes a massive geographical and cultural leap. Under Bishop Zielonka's successor, Bishop Peter A. Zurawecki, the movement gets renamed to the Christ Catholic Church of the Americas and Europe. They are literally stepping off the local stage and declaring themselves a universal home. This shifted them from being a haven for one specific immigrant community to a Catholic institution for people spanning 2 entire continents. It shows a really early, bold commitment to breaking down borders. Then, by 1965, the torch is passed once again. Bishop Karl Prucher shifts the focus over to Boston and eventually renames it simply the Christ Catholic Church. Bishop Prucher is a fascinating guy because he basically becomes synonymous with the Free Catholic identity. He didn't just lead the church, he left this massive historical publishing footprint behind. For instance, the St. Willibrord Press, which is a press they actually still utilize in their current constitutional documents. Prucher prioritized the written word, helping to really define what it meant to be a Free Catholic, and providing the intellectual framework that the church relies on to this day. Finally, our historical timeline brings us right up to the modern era in 2007. On September 9th of that year, Bishop Pruder subconditionally consecrated Bishop Brian Ernest Brown at the Cathedral of the Prince of Peace. Bishop Brown was then entrusted with the episcopal protection and oversight of the church as we know it today. This was the moment that permanently cemented the modern identity of the organization, officially establishing the province of the Prince of Peace as the administrative body and the primary ecclesiastical authority for the whole jurisdiction. Part 1. The Free Catholic Movement, Forging a Congregational Polity. So, what did this 70-year history actually build? Well, it built a system that actively rejects absolute top-down control. The church explicitly says no to traditional hierarchical popes and earthly kings, opting instead for a free, congregational polity governed by Christ alone. The preamble to their constitution states this in some seriously striking terms. It says the church knows no national boundaries, no ethnic allegiance, no historic founder except Jesus Christ, no imperial court, and no secular government. Because they are a free church, ultimate authority doesn't sit with an ancient papal crown.
Instead, it rests with Jesus Christ, whose will is made known through the prayerful discernment of everyday faithful people, just assembled in their local congregations.
But, don't let all that freedom fool you. Their modern constitution is strictly anchored to some massive historical and theological bedrock documents. Their canons explicitly uphold the spirit of the 7 ecumenical councils, going all the way from Nicaea in 325 AD to Nicaea II in 787 AD. They subscribe to the 1874 14 Theses of Bonn and the 1889 Declaration of Utrecht. But then, right alongside those ancient texts, they turn around and fully affirm the 1998 Catholic Bill of Rights. This emphasizes basic human rights, freedom of conscience, and the right for all Catholics, regardless of gender or orientation, to participate fully in church governance. It is a stunning bit of historical whiplash, and honestly a brilliant blend of the ancient and the ultramodern.
Part 2, Generous Orthodoxy Today, a blueprint for thoughtful inclusivity. This generous orthodoxy isn't just some abstract theological concept for them. It's their day-to-day practical blueprint. It allows this radically progressive inclusivity to perfectly unite with an ancient apostolic faith. The source material outlines that they serve all of God's children and welcome absolutely everyone to Christ's sacraments. And they're highly specific about this. They do so regardless of race, creed, gender, sexual orientation, relationship status, or perceived state of grace. In their view, baptism makes you a member of the family, and no human organizational scheme or theological dispute can sever that tie. They even explicitly state that there is no such action as excommunication in their church, none. They maintain the traditional 7 sacraments and ancient creeds for sure, but they make absolutely certain those sacraments are freely available to everyone without qualification. We've traced this organization from its Polish Old Catholic roots back in 1937, through its evolution into a free Catholic movement, all the way to its modern identity as a radically inclusive, generously Orthodox community. It's a structure that leans on ancient ecumenical councils just as heavily as it leans on a modern Catholic Bill of Rights. So I want to leave you with this provocative question to reflect on. Can a church rooted in the ancient past actually be the blueprint for the postmodern future? How might a deep, profound respect for history actually hold the key to a truly inclusive faith? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I encourage you to keep asking these big questions.